Hello and welcome to another episode of the Brocade Campus Feature Explainer Series. I'm Terry Henry. This time around, we're going to talk about VRRP, the standard, as opposed to VRRP-E, which is a Brocade extension. So for the most part, best practice says unless you need vendor interoperability, the best case scenario is to use VRRP-E. So in cases where you do want a Brocade device to talk to another vendor, VRRP is going to be the way to do that. However, there are some downsides to the standard. For example, you can't just change the priority and have the master fail over. And when the master does fail over, you from the owner to the previous backup, you can't ping the default gateway. So there are some minor downsides to the way VRRP works, and that's why we created our own extension, VRRP-E or VRRP extended, and other vendors created their own proprietary extensions as well to make up for some of the shortcomings of the standard. So anyway, so what we're going to do, we have two devices. So in the 10.0.0.0/24 subnet, we have a .1 and a .2. So the .1 is going to be our normal default gateway. So our downstream devices are going to use .1 as their default gateway. The other device has a physical address of .2, and it will also take over for .1 in the event that .1 goes down. So the benefit of VRRP is you only need 2 addresses as opposed to 3 for VRRP-E. So the way we configure that, on both sides you turn on router VRRP. Under the VE, one side is going to be .1, so it's going to be the VIP address physically assigned to its VE, or to a physical address, but mostly on a VE. The other side is .2. Then we create a VRID, so the VRID in this case is VRID1, which doesn't have to match the VLAN number and the VE number, but best practice says it probably should. And you can have multiple VRIDs on an interface. One side starts as owner, and the other side starts as backup. So in VRRP-E, both sides start as backup, and there's a priority. In VRRP, one side is the owner, so he physically owns that address, and his priority will always be 254, which is the highest possible address. Higher is better. And then the other side will be backup. So he will only take over for the owner in the event that the owner goes away, his interface goes away, or the router physically goes down. Then we assign the virtual IP, so 10.0.0.1. As you can see, it's the same as the physical. On the backup side, the physical is .2, but we assign .1 the virtual address in the event that .1 goes away. And lastly, we activate both sides. So in VRRP, there's an owner and a backup. In VRRP-E, there is no such thing as an owner. There is just a master and a backup. So normally in VRRP, the master is going to be the owner. They're one and the same. And only should the owner go down will the backup ever become master. So let's have a look at how we could figure that. Now, there are other things you can do in here, track ports and other items like that, but we're just going to concentrate, in this case, we're just going to concentrate on a basic configuration. So as always, router VRRP, we turn on the routing protocol first. Oh, excuse me. Router VRRP works better from config mode. Then we assign a router interface as a VLAN. So VLAN 1, router dash interface VE1. So now we go into our interface VE1 and give it an IP address. So IP address 10.0.0.1/24. Then we're going to assign our VRID. So IP VRRP VRID1, right? And we're going to, at this point, this one is going to be our owner, right? So we assign this as owner. We assign the virtual IP address, which is going to be the same as our physical address on this side. And lastly, we activate it. So it's going to tell you that it's activating. If we look in the log, so if we do a show log here, we're going to see that it went from initialized to master state. Right, so if it's stuck in initialized, that means the interface is down that I've assigned it to. But in this case, I have an interface that's up, so it's gone into a master state. And I could do a show IP Vrrp. Shows me that for VRID1, I'm the master. It's administratively enabled. I am the owner. My priority is 255, which will always be because I'm the owner. And it automatically assigns me that priority. Here's my hello dead interval. So my hello interval, I'm going to send a hello every 1 second. And lastly, I can see next hello sent in 0.1 seconds from the time I ran that. So there is some other things you can see. So you could see, you could do a brief output. We could look at stats. So stats, again, if you're trying to troubleshoot this is a fantastic command, probably the best command you could possibly run for troubleshooting. It's going to tell you any kind of mismatch it's getting from its neighbor. So if there's an IP mismatch, if there's a hello interval mismatch, password mismatch, anything like that is going to show up here. So this is a great command from a troubleshooting perspective. All right, so we've got our owner set up, and now we'll just drop over to the other side. I'm going to just console to the remote side, and we're going to set up our .2 router here. So going to config T, router VRRP, right, and then VLAN 1, router interface VE1, go to interface VE1. Now, when I assign an address here, it's going to be, my physical address is going to be something other than .1. My other one was .1, right? So this is going to be .2 in this case. It doesn't really matter. It could be anything in the subnet. Right? And then we're going to assign the VRID, so IP VRRP VRID1. So it's very important that that VRID number matches my partner. Right? It has to be VRID1 on both sides, or it doesn't matter what that VRID number is, but it has to match on both sides. It's very important. Then we are going to assign myself as backup, right? So the other side was owner. This one is backup because I don't physically own that address. Then I assign my VIP address, 10.0.0.1. So this is going to be the address of the physical owner's address. And then lastly, I'm going to activate. So it says it's activating, and if I look at my logs, I should see myself come up as backup. So it went from state initialized here to state backup, right? So I know right away I can see the master because I went into a backup state. But show IP VRRP shows me that, right, I am state backup. It's administratively enabled. My priority is 100, which is the default priority. So priorities really only come into place here when we're talking about track ports. But in terms of who the master is at any given point, assuming you're not using track points, the owner is always 255, and then by default I'm going to be 100. And then we see the IP address 10.0.0.1 is our virtual. Here's our virtual MAC address that is generated. And then we see the master router 10.0.0.1, and it expires in 2.9 seconds in this particular case. So I always know who the master router is because the master is sending me those hellos every second going, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. And then if it stops for that dead interval, 3.5 seconds, or 3.6 seconds in this case, see the dead interval here is 3.6, then I will take over for that address. So at this point, I'm not going to do anything as a backup until I stop receiving the hellos from the master for the dead interval. But I should be able to ping that address. So if I ping 10.0.0.1, I can do that, which is the remote side, and the VIP. One anomaly, if I mentioned it before or not, I'm not sure, but one anomaly with VRRP is that if that 10.0.0.1 fails over from the owner to the backup, which will then become master, of course, it will not be pingable. So the downstream devices will not be able to ping 10.0.0.1. It's not a big deal. It still routes fine, but it some downstream devices may find it disconcerting that they can't ping their default gateway, but it still works and it's functionally the same. Okay, that's it. Thanks for joining. Hope you enjoyed.